good to see you all here. Tonight is the fifth of 6 lectures in our annual John D. Owen History Lecture Series. And our focus this year has been on businesses and organizations and their history here in Lynchburg. Just a quick reminder that our February lecture, which we had to postpone because of snow, you remember February was very snowy. Carl Hutcherson is going to be here to talk about the history of funeral homes, specifically Hutcherson Funeral Home, and also funeral homes in general in Lynchburg in terms of the Jim Crow era. So there was segregation not only in life but also in death. And he will be here on Wednesday, May 7th at 5 p.m. So we hope to see you then. And tonight we are joined by Kathryn Yarzebinski, the President and CEO of the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation. And GLCF is close to our hearts here at the Jones because they have given us great support over the years. And their recent grants are helping us to upgrade and improve our technology. This year we got a grant which has enabled us to replace our staff computers. It was badly needed. And we now have staff laptops, which will be with our new reference desk, which is right behind the screen here. We just had it installed on Monday, and our staff will be able to have a mobile service model with those laptops. And then last year in 2023, GLCF gave us funds for an overhead camera system. And that's been very useful because when we have fragile materials, fragile books that are very old, we want to preserve the bindings as best we can. So imaging from on top rather than flat on a screen is really important. And so that grant helped us to digitize the Seth Woodruff account book. And then we also just this past week, we just digitized some aerial photographs, the Underwood aerial photographs of the city, which were taken in the early 1900s. So you can find all of that on our digital collections. But it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Kathryn and the work she does to make great things possible across the city. Kathryn Yarzebinski, President and CEO of the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation. She is a graduate of Virginia Tech and the University of Lynchburg. Kathryn has served in various professional and volunteer roles at local nonprofits since 2022. Since joining the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation in 2022, she's taken a special interest in the history of the organization. And I can tell you she was doing her homework because she contacted us a couple of weeks ago and said, what do you got in the Jones about GLCF? And we found some things which she's going to include in her presentation tonight. So she has been very interested in the history of GLCF and how it's benefited our community since its founding in 1972. So kind of recent history. But Kathryn is going to speak for about an hour, and we'll have time for a group Q&A and then individual Q&A after that. So please welcome Kathryn Yarzebinski.
Thank you. I appreciate you all being here on this beautiful spring evening, and you're all here to learn about our community, so I really appreciate that. And thank you for the warm welcome, Deb. I love being here at the Jones. I love libraries in general, and I discovered this little gym a couple of years ago doing some family genealogy, so it's always fun to be back here, especially knowing that we give some grant support to help your programs. So I want to start tonight by acknowledging a few people. First of all, Bill Quillian, who I wrote this wonderful document called Our History. This is what Deb was referring to. She helped me track this down. We had a Word document of this, but she helped me find the original document from 2002, which was published in celebration of our 30th anniversary back in 2002. So it was fun to see the original, and a lot of what I'm talking about tonight comes straight out of this document. Bill kind of laid out the framework of what the foundation was and is, so I was able to use that document to kind of start our presentation tonight. I spoke with so many people locally who wanted to share memories. Some of those people are here tonight about things that happened when they were on the board or organization. So it was fun to speak with people about their memories and their thoughts on our impact, and I've tried to incorporate as much of that as possible tonight. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to start tonight just by backing up a little bit and talking about what is a community foundation, because a lot of people don't really know what a community foundation does. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we became what we are today and our impact and what we have done to help shape our community over the past 50 plus years. So community foundations, if you're not familiar, community foundations are grant-making public charities. And the big thing with community foundations is that we're very focused on local grant-making. So we don't focus on any particular type of nonprofit. We don't do just healthcare nonprofit grants or education nonprofit grants. We are dedicated to improving the lives of people in a defined local geographic area. And we also bring together financial resources of individuals, families, and organizations to help support effective nonprofits and communities. So there are a ton of community foundations across the country. There's about 900. We are one of those. We're probably mid-size in terms of assets. So really proud to be part of the Community Foundation Village. Just to give you a sense of where community foundations came from, back in 1914, well over 100 years ago, a banker, surprise, surprise, came up with this idea. He was in the trust world and thought it would be a good idea to pool charitable funds from many donors into a single permanent endowment to benefit the local community. So that was in Cleveland, Ohio, back in 1914. So the big focus there was local, supporting local organizations. And then by 1950, that concept had spread to Virginia. Norfolk became the first Virginia Community Foundation serving that local region. And then, as you know, in 1972, Lynchburg got in on the game. And like I said, there's over 900 community foundations in the U.S. focused on improving their local communities. So the value of community foundations, we are leaders, we are innovators, we create personal relationships because we know not only our donors, but our community, what our community's needs are, and which organizations are best serving those needs. So I think that makes us pretty unique in the nonprofit world. So the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation, we are a grant-making nonprofit. We create permanently endowed funds that are created by individuals, families, organizations, businesses. All of those folks come to us to create permanently endowed funds. And those funds are used to create grants and scholarships for local nonprofits. So if you think of Virginia like a puzzle, this is our service area. This is what we serve. Virginia has a ton of community foundations. There's one in Charlottesville, there's one in Hampton Roads, there's one in Danville. So we kind of serve this chunk of the state. Our service area is officially Lynchburg, Amherst, Appomattox, Bedford, and we recently went through a strategic planning process. We redefined our mission and we created a new vision statement. So you'll see in our mission that our primary goal is to work to solve our community's greatest challenges. So that's where we hope to be. That's our goal to be, that's our mission, to be solving challenges here in our community and also to be helping people create their charitable legacy. Our current board is listed here. We've got 16 wonderful people who represent all of our service area. They come from all different parts of our service area. In fact, my microphone, hopefully it's not dying. Part of our bylaws is that we have to have representation from across our service area. So we always make sure that we have someone from each of the surrounding counties and Lynchburg on our board. John Stone is our board chair. He's here with us tonight. Thanks for being here, John. Raise your hand. John Stone. And I wanted to point out that we have 3 internal committees that really take care of a lot of the work of what we do. We're so thankful for our board members and volunteers on those committees. We have a distribution committee that evaluates our grant applications and approves and makes grants twice per year. We have an investment committee that monitors our investment performance, which is a really important job to make sure that our investments are growing as they need to be and as we want them to be. And we have a finance committee that monitors our internal numbers and budgets. So all of these are volunteer positions that support me and my work tremendously, and we're very, very thankful to have all of those hardworking board members and volunteers. So we administer over 300 permanently endowed funds. It's about 331 funds right now. Those funds range in size from $10,000 to well over $6 million. And each of these funds is invested. So we work with 6 different local investment partners to take care of that money. It's not sitting in a safe deposit box in the back of the office. It is in investments, growing, hopefully keeping up with inflation. And those investments make up over $70 million as of December 31st. Have not checked the market today. Might not be that today. So using these endowed funds, we create grants every year. And last year we gave out over $2.3 million in grants. Deb, am I doing something with the microphone that?
You just keep your thumb off of the...
Yeah, okay, I'm trying. All right, last year we used those endowed funds to create over $2.3 million in grants to 251 organizations. So the scope of that is pretty significant. I'm really proud of what we're doing. That also includes scholarships. We give scholarships for local students. We have about 50 different scholarship funds that people have created through the years. So we're helping local students as well. In total, we have granted over $35 million since 1972. And all of that is made possible by the generosity of people who have created our endowed funds. So here's the history part. How did we get here? Back in 1971, Tom Houck, who I wish could have been here today, but he was not able to join us. He and I have talked on the phone several times recently. He's a lovely man, and he, back in 1971, was an employee of a local bank, Fidelity National, and he submitted to the bank's suggestion committee a suggestion for a new service that the bank might start, a community trust. So we really have Tom to thank for a lot of this. This is Tom's actual original suggestion, and I won't read it to you, but I just want to point out that it's beautifully written and typed on an old-fashioned typewriter. And he points out a couple of things here, that a trust would take care of gifts in perpetuity after the donor's lifetime, that the trust would help the community, the most needed segments of the community, as opposed to a one-time gift given to a specific charitable cause. So he really had a vision for what this could be, and he thought others should know about it. So he dropped this in the suggestion committee's box, and lo and behold, they agreed. They thought it was a great idea. So it was approved by the suggestion committee. This is the routing form that was used, which, you know, today we have so much done electronically, digitally, and by email, so it was really fun to see this hard copy routing form signed by Vincent Sawyer, 6/21/71, thanking him for the idea, and also saying we agree this should be moved forward. Bernard Baldwin Jr., father of Bernard Baldwin III, who you all might know, was helped to provide the documentation for the community trust originally. So things are moving along. And of course, Tom wanted us to know, because he's so humble and wonderful, that he got the suggestion going, but it was Nancy Pollock, who breathed life into the idea, and Tom says she was an angel. I didn't know Nancy. I don't know if anyone here did know Nancy, but apparently just a wonderful woman, and Tom says she breathed life into the idea and had many wonderful clients that she helped with their trusts and estates, and was just a wonderful trusted member of the community who really bought into the idea and promoted it. And she ended up becoming one of the first initial 3 donors. We had 3 donors, initial funding of $14,000 from the Plymouth Foundation, A.H. Easley, and Nancy Pollock. And so in 1972, October 12th is our birthday, we came into existence officially with the adoption of a resolution and declaration of trust. So just to clarify, this is where we were in 1972. We had a whopping $14,000 in assets. The trust set up an organization, well, not really an organization. It set up 2 committees, a distribution committee to give out money and a trustee committee to manage the money. The members of the distribution committee were as follows: and you might see a familiar name or two in that list. We'll get back to Ken White here in just a few minutes. But that was our very first distribution committee. The trustee committee consisted of the bank president, E.R. Harris Jr. But from the outset, they knew that other banks would be a part of this. It wouldn't just be one bank. And by 1973, they had identified 2 additional banks to come in, UVB/First National, and the First and Merchants National Bank became trustees of the trust. So after that, 1973 to 1979, there was not a lot going on. A little bit of promotion, there was a mailing or 2 sent out, and then there was a grant that was made, our very first grant, a little over $2,000, to help with the formation of the Central Virginia Speech and Hearing Clinic, which I don't believe exists at this point, but apparently this was an integral grant to getting that going. That was our very first grant. In 1978, having just retired from the presidency of Randolph-Macon Women's College, Bill Quillian came on board at the bank. So he joined the trust division. And in 1979, a year later, he was asked to devote some of his time, just take a look at this little community trust over here that's bubbled up. In 1979, the directors of the bank decided to create its first fund, its first permanently endowed fund. And it's interesting that we were just talking about Carl Hutcherson, who's going to do a speech here in a couple of weeks, it sounds like. But his father was a director of the bank and a respected citizen, and the fund was named for him. And that was our very first fund, the Carl Hutcherson Fund. So $2,000 came from the bank to get that going, and then others chipped in, $325, and off we went. Our fund minimum now is $10,000 to get a fund started, so that's changed a bit. So again, just growing over the years. In 1979, a letter was sent to a few hundred people. 1979, grants were received and reviewed twice a year, June and December, which we still do to this day. 1980, there was a dinner meeting for about 100 local people with another director from another community foundation down in Winston-Salem who came to talk about the success of their foundation down there. And then in 1980, Bill Quillian, who was over at the trust department, was named as the secretary of the distribution committee. So all these things were kind of working together to help the trust begin to grow and attract new funds. In 1988, Bill Quillian was thinking of retiring from the bank, and someone with great foresight decided to ask him to direct the operation of the Greater Lynchburg Community Trust, as it was called at that point. And he became our first director in 1988 as a part-time role. Did anyone know Bill Quillian? Did you all? Yes, a few? So I've heard, I didn't meet him myself, but I've heard he was an incredible person. So we were very, very fortunate to snag Bill, who by that point had a lot of experience and knowledge about what we were doing. And in 1988, this is what things looked like. So we had grown a bit. We had grown from $14,000 in assets to close to $300,000, and at this point we had given out a little over $50,000 in grants. I love this picture. I don't know if you all remember when Elizabeth Taylor came to town with John Warner, who was maybe running for office at that point, not sure. This picture came from Randolph College. I snagged it on their website because I think it's so funny. Liz is giving Bill she's fluttering her eyelashes at him, and Bill's not even looking at Elizabeth Taylor. He's watching John's reaction, and John's not having any of it. I don't know what he's doing, but he doesn't look too thrilled about any of it. But just a wonderful person, Bill Quillian, and well loved and respected across the community, even by Elizabeth Taylor. So in 1989, people were realizing, the powers that be were realizing that it was going to be tough to run this thing with just two committees, an executive director, and they decided that we needed a board of directors. So the trust document was revised and a board of directors was created. This was the very first board of directors, and I'm sure you'll see some names that you recognize on this list. Quite a distinguished group. I don't know at this point if they had a requirement for geographic representation across the service area. I see a lot of Lynchburg names on this list, but some Bedford names as well. In 1990, the board met for the first time, had its first meeting, and they elected George T. Stewart as the chair. George was a retired, well, I guess at the time he was a current employee, chief executive officer of First Colony Life Insurance. He went on to retire in 1992, and a fund was set up in memory, or excuse me, in honor of him. He passed away several years later. He served as chairman until 1996. Jim Candler, who a lot of you probably also know, succeeded George as the chair of our board. And looking back in 2002, on the 30th anniversary, this was what he had to say about his experience. He was grateful to have been part of such a worthy effort. And again, wonderful leaders. He gave other people credit. He gave credit to Bill Quillian and George Stewart. And he said unequivocally that he knew that this was going to help improve the quality of our life for citizens in our community. So board chairs since the board was formed in 1992 is quite a list here as well. So from George Stewart in 1990 up to John Stone in the present day, we've had some really incredible people leading our organization, and we're very grateful to them for getting us to where we are now. In 1997, we finally got some administrative support. Shanda Rowe was hired as an administrative assistant. She was our first support staff. And then in 1997, Bill Quillian retired. He became an advisor to the board. So at the end of Bill's tenure, 42 funds have been established, and there was a lot of growth. So from that humble beginning of $14,000, we were well over $6 million by the time Bill retired. Grants had grown from $51,000 given in the year 1988 up to close to $100,000. They had doubled by 1997. So our impact was growing as well as our assets. In 1998, a new executive director came on board, Stuart Terrell. Stuart was a retired bank executive as well. He had great bank experience. And using that experience, he helped to expand the foundation to have a second entity that allowed us to work with investment managers that were not banks. So we kind of expanded our trust document so that we can have investment advisory firms manage our funds. In 2000, Stuart retired and also became an advisor to the board. And at the end of his tenure, we had grown again. Well over $14 million. And in the year 2000, we were giving out over $300,000 in grants. Ken White was next to step into the role. And I love this quote when I talked with Ken. I wish he was here tonight. He's not with us tonight, but my mic is not cooperating. Ken told me when I asked him about what he remembered about his job, he said it was a really small office when he started. And he said, in fact, and this visual makes me giggle every time I think about it, when the phone rang, Shanda just handed him the phone. It was so small that they just reached over when someone called. She just stretched the cord right over. So Ken decided that they needed more space. And then he also said when they moved from the 19th floor to the 10th floor, which was the world's only perpendicular move. It was more perpendicular than horizontal, which I also thought was really funny. So, and both of those offices were provided at no cost, which is really incredible. It really helped us keep our expenses low and to be able to use every dollar we possibly could to give out in grants to the community. So Ken took off on a lot of different initiatives and wanted to increase our visibility. So from 2001 to 2003, he orchestrated a road show of receptions around the service area. in partnership with lovely people who opened up their homes and organizations to be able to host us, to try to raise our visibility. And then in 2003, Appomattox County, which had not been part of the service area, was added. The cornerstone of that effort was to create the Appomattox County Education Foundation Fund. And all of that was really part of the 30th anniversary. By 2003, we were at our 30th anniversary. And one of the things that happened was a tree planting happened in all the service areas. This is the tree that's at the Bedford Courthouse right now. This is a recent picture. This is a replacement tree. The original tree was hit by a car and taken out. I'm guessing that was before that boulder was there. Maybe that's why the boulder is there now, I don't know. But that is the tree that's currently there. And as I mentioned, Deb and the Jones Memorial Library helped me find the tabloid that was placed in the News in Advance that year. And this is an article that was written by Joseph Knackle Jr., who some of you probably know, passed away a few months ago. And he had written this whole full-page article. And the quote at the top is, "The art of taxation consists in so plucking the goose as to obtain the largest possible amount of feathers with the least possible amount of hissing." And I don't know who came up with that quote, if that was one of Joe's originals or if he got that somewhere, but I have a feeling he came up with the next part of this, which was in very large print, "Stop getting goosed, get hissed, not plucked, go community trust." So that was the marketing effort in 2003. Ken also got started the Youth Philanthropy Council in 2003 as part of the 30th anniversary of the Trust. And this program is still going today. We just had our 19th annual. We had to skip a couple of years because of COVID. This top picture is an early picture. It's not one of the originals, but I think that's probably from the late 90s, early 2000s. The picture below that, it was taken a couple of weeks ago at Parkview Community Mission. Those kids in that picture, that's just one-fifth of the students. That was the team that did research on Parkview Community Mission, but we had 25 to 30 students participate in that program again this year. This is a program that allows high school seniors from across our service area to come in and receive grant applications, review them. They learn about grant making, responsible grant making. They learn about nonprofit management a little bit. They go out and tour the nonprofits to learn about what they do in person. And then at the end, they choose 2 grant winners. So this is still happening. We're able to give out a $10,000 grant every year because Wells Fargo, which originally was Wachovia, they have sponsored that program every single year since its inception. So they give us $10,000 so that those students can give out $10,000, and then we, the foundation, provides $5,000 to give out a second grant. So the other thing that I love about this bottom picture is that if you look at these sweet students, this white sweater standing next to me is Lucy White, who is the granddaughter of Ken White. And she was in our program this year, which I just think is a really great full circle kind of moment to have her on the council. Also, in 2003, Stuart Terrell, he chaired that first Youth Philanthropy Council. He felt really strongly about that and wanted to promote the program and served on the committee every year until 2018. So in 2024, in honor of Stuart's service and dedication to that program, we named a fund for him, and that fund supports the Youth Philanthropy Program. This is Stuart with 3 lovely young ladies on the council. So by 2004, when Ken was winding down, I think he tried to retire once and we pulled him back in and tried to leave again. But in 2004, when he finally stepped down, this is where we were, had grown tremendously. So again, from that early beginning up to well over $20 million in assets by 2004, and we were giving out close to $350,000 in grants in 2004. Next came George Murphy, who was president and CEO from 2004 to 2007. He had retired from the paper business, so he brought in a slightly different skill set, and the job became a full-time position rather than part-time. In 2006, George took us from a system of spreadsheets and note cards, which we still have in the back of our office. Note cards where we wrote down donations, and that's how we kept track of everything. The accountant who was off-site received very large spreadsheets to try to reconcile all of our $20+ million of funds. We finally got a real accounting system, so I'm very thankful for that today. And Terry Jamerson, who was board chair from 2005 to 2007, I asked her just to give me some memories about her time serving on the board. Of course, she was on the board for 10 years, just board chair for 2 of those 10, but she was just saying that in 2004, it was a really, really small operation still. There was not a lot of rules, policies in place. They were just kind of figuring it out as they went. They created a spending policy and other rules to govern how they managed funds. They weren't really sending appeals. The only thing that was mailed out was an occasional thank you letter for gifts that came in. They worked on the logo. This was the logo at that time, Greater Lynchburg Community Trust, with a different version of the tree than we have now. They did create an annual list of donors and put it in the news in advance, and a little trifold that they mailed out. We have some of those over here on the table if you'd like to see those. Everything was just kind of being invented as they went, which was an exciting time, but I'm sure a lot of work. In July 2004, Cheryl Hall, who is still with us today after many, many years, was added to the staff as a part-time administrative assistant. This is Cheryl on the left. And then Kendra Floyd was hired in 2007 as our accountant. We finally had an accountant come and work for us instead of sending all of our materials across town. But Cheryl, just such an asset to the organization. She's still with us today. And if you all have ever met Cheryl, you know that she's a wonderful asset and an incredible person. And has all the dirt. She's worked with 5 different presidents, I think, at this point. So we're thrilled that she's still with us today. So by 2007, when George Murphy was retiring, assets had reached over $28 million. And our impact in the community was tremendous. Just over $1 million. When you think about 2007, $1 million being pumped out into our community, it was a big deal. Stuart Faber was up next as our president and CEO from 2008 to 2015. He was the longest tenured president and CEO to date, so he really had a lot of time to make some great things happen, and he jumped right in. He had retired as the president of SunTrust Bank and came in with great experience and ideas, and was really happy to be at a nonprofit. I think what he told me was that joining the trust was like a breath of fresh air. So he had joined an organization that was community-minded and doing great things, and he really enjoyed it. Had a lot of ambitious goals, and he hit quite a few of them. He helped us celebrate our 40th anniversary in 2012. He created the Community Heroes campaign, which was probably the most aggressive campaign we'd had to date to help people become aware of how they could start new funds with us. With a gift of $10,000 or more. They held a kickoff luncheon and created what was called, and what still is called, the Quillian Award for Service. And guess who was the first recipient of the Quillian Award? It was Bill Quillian, who's in this picture here with Ken White and Stuart Faber at Lynchburg College at that kickoff luncheon for the 40th anniversary campaign. There was also a gala, a black tie kind of event that was held, and I love this because Stuart got in his car and drove to DC to meet with Leland Melvin at NASA. He walked into NASA and asked Leland to be the speaker at our 40th anniversary gala, and lo and behold, Leland agreed to do it. So we had a real astronaut for our 40th anniversary gala, very inspirational from what I understand, and great attendance and great awareness of what we were doing. And I love this the graphic. If you see that, I don't know who designed this, but our little tree has become the jet plume coming out of The rock is very creative. 40 years strong and blasting into the future. And they really went with the theme. Some pictures from that event. We see the Shules, Roselle and Elliot's. And forgive me if you were at this event and you're not in the photos. There were a lot of pictures to choose from. Shules, Mary Jane Dolan, of course that's Stewart, Sam Cardwell, Joan Foster, who may have been the mayor at the time. We've got the Wrights down here. So some of our wonderful supporters through the years were there for that event. And we also, at that point, Stewart decided that we needed a little more space again, since we had more staff. Windhurst was being developed right at this time, so he made the decision to move the offices out to Windhurst. This was our office, if you all remember visiting at that location, and you can see our plaque outside the door here announcing the Greater Lynchburg Community Trust lives here. This was an open house reception that was held. George Murphy was being honored at this event. I see Sandy McKenna back there in one of these photos, and Skipper Holt and Bill Quillian again. So just a nice time to celebrate George Murphy's accomplishments. And this is what a typical board meeting looked like for us. And the big thing to note here is there is a lot of paper. This was a distribution committee meeting, I think probably here at the bottom. And this is the group reviewing stacks and stacks and stacks of grant applications. But look at how hard they're working here. Very diligent. There's Bill Gale over here getting, I guess that was your award when you were the board chair. But I just love this picture because on the surface it's kind of a boring picture, but what I love is that everyone is working really hard. These are incredibly talented, smart people who are really giving it their all and helping the organization grow and do well. And the distribution committee, sifting through stacks and stacks of grant applications was a real job. Today we do all that electronically. They still work just as hard, but we don't waste as much paper. And we don't send people home with banker's boxes full of grant applications, which is what we used to do, apparently. So much hard work happening there. Stewart got our website going. For the first time, we had a website where people could log in, learn about what we did, make a gift online, and understand what the Community Trust was all about online. So at the end of Stewart's tenure, 2015, growth again had been steady. As you recall, there was a little bit of financial excitement happening between 2007 and 2009, which probably didn't help our numbers grow as quickly as they might have, but still almost $36 million in assets. And our grants had jumped to over $1.5 million a year out into the local community. Bill Bodine came on board in 2015. Bill had been director of multiple medical practices and had great marketing experience, a great eye for technology. He knew what we needed to do technology-wise. He brought us into grant applications that were online, created a more branded email address. I think at the time it was just bodine@aol.com or something to email Bill. So he made some improvements there, and he launched us into the world of social media, which we had not been in before. That, again, was great for visibility. Bill also did extensive outreach to nonprofits, helped us create a lot of agency funds during his tenure, so we manage endowments for lots of local nonprofits because of Bill's good work. And he also created a series of promotional videos to help with visibility. In 2017, the name Greater Lynchburg Community Trust was changed to the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation. We had a new logo and a new name. And people ask sometimes, why did you change the name? Why did it go from Greater Lynchburg Community Trust to Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation? And I like to tell people that wasn't a quick decision. There was a survey done, there was some research done. One of the reasons was the local bus company is the GLTC, and we were the GLCT, and apparently there was a lot of confusion. People also thought that a trust meant that we were a bank. They didn't understand that we were a nonprofit organization. And in a survey, they said they weren't as likely to give to a trust as they were to a foundation. So all of those decisions or all those factors came into the decision to change the name. And Bill was really on a roll, making big changes. He moved the office from Windhurst to where we are now on Commerce Street, downtown. So there's Bill and Kendra and Cheryl standing in front of our new office, 1100 Commerce Street. And Bill really felt like with the downtown perking up and being more revitalized that we wanted to be a part of that. In 2016, we had a committee called the Blue Sky Committee, which I love that name. It was focused on big picture thinking. You know, what can we be doing to make a big impact? What things should we be thinking about? And that Blue Sky Committee had an idea to create a grant that wasn't just one of our small standard grants that we were giving twice a year. You know, those grants are usually between a couple $1,000s, maybe $10,000 at that time. They said, we want to do something big. We want to create a big grant. So they came up with the idea of having a $100,000 grant to give out annually to really make a big splash and to help local organizations transform their operations. So Bill and the board launched a campaign to raise $2 million, which would create, with a 5% spending policy, the $100,000 annual Century Fund grant. And very successful campaign, great support from the community. And in 2020, which, does anyone remember what was happening in 2020? It was a long time ago. Anyone? The first grant was given to the Free Clinic of Central Virginia, which, as I'm sure you would understand, was dealing with a lot of things at that point. A really important place for local people to get medical help during COVID-19, and it was a very appropriate choice to help Free Clinic of Central Virginia with that very first Century Fund grant. So since then, we've given out 4 more since then. We'll announce the 2025 recipient in a few months. But just some really wonderful organizations that have gotten transformational gifts as a result of all of the folks that support the Century Fund campaign. Also in 2020, a local woman named Megan Huffman, who hopefully you all know, had an idea that she wanted to do something to help. Something. She wanted to be able to contribute in some way. At the same time, there was some discussion at the foundation about how we could help nonprofits that were struggling so much during 2020, during COVID-19, to bring in volunteers and to operate as normal. So it was decided that Megan could be in charge of this organization, which is called SHARE. SHARE is a national organization, and we now have a local chapter, basically, of SHARE Greater Lynchburg. And so Megan was brought in to run that program, and it was our first kind of program that really focused exclusively on nonprofits and how we can support them and amplify what they're doing. So Megan was hired later in 2022. From 2020 to 2022, she was not an employee of the organization. She was fundraising to raise her own salary and to raise money for the expenses that she had in that program. So Megan is now our part-time Director of Community Outreach and Director of SHARE Greater Lynchburg. And this is a glance at their website. I would definitely encourage you to check this website out. There's a place where you can find volunteer opportunities for local nonprofits. It's great. It'll let you sort opportunities by different types of work that it's needed locally. So check out SHARE Greater Lynchburg. Megan keeps that updated constantly. Bill presided over our 50th anniversary in 2022. There was a 50th anniversary celebration at the Virginian, big beautiful event. And as a part of that 50th campaign, there was an idea to create a one-time $50,000 grant in honor of our 50th anniversary, which we needed to do some fundraising for, but we pulled it off. And this was a really fun night to celebrate 50 years. We'd come a long way at this point. Some photos from that event. And down in this corner, this was my fourth day on the job, maybe. When John Stone told me I was hired, he said, by the way, just mark your calendar for our 50th anniversary gala in which you'll need to make a big speech. when Bill when he was stepping down in 2022, this is where we were. Over $52 million in assets. Over $2 million in grants being given out annually. I've stepped on board as of June 30th, 2022. I've done some things in my tenure, which I'm approaching 3 years at this point. So it's a couple things that I'm proud of since I've started. We created a strategic plan with the board to plan out the next 5 years of our operations. We've been accredited again through the Council on Foundations, which looks at every aspect of our operating procedures to make sure that they are up to snuff and following best practices for community foundations. We have a new logo. So just some things that we have done since 2022. So we talk about the impact of the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation. I just wanted to point out some wonderful thoughts from nonprofit organizations who have weighed in on this. And what jumps off the page to me when I look at what nonprofits say about the foundation is that we support local organizations that are making a difference in people's lives. They talk about the village, right? So the local community being part of one village together. They call us partners. So we help them year after year. We are a reliable source of funding that makes sure that they can serve our community, feed people that are hungry, serve people in need. One nonprofit director said, "We have a future because we have someone who trusts our work." And then another one said, "When we show that the foundation believes in us, other people believe in us as well." But probably one of my favorite quotes from a local nonprofit executive director who received the 50 fund that we successfully fundraised for in 2023 is that having a partner like the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation gives them the ability to step forward and do programs or initiatives that may not have a commercial basis. It gives them the courage to try new things, to know that there's funding available from a community partner like the Community Foundation. And I think we can all agree that whether a nonprofit organization is providing food or bringing the arts to our community, all of these things are really important. And I'm just so proud that we've been able to fund all of these wonderful nonprofits through the years. So I'll leave you with this. I see us as a partner in philanthropy. I think we have spent the past 52 years developing partnerships with individuals, organizations, families across our community who come to us and trust us with their assets, their charitable legacy, so that we can support our local organization. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions. Welcome.
Kathryn, you briefly mentioned distribution policy, and I believe you said 5%.
Spending policy is 5%.
Has it always been that, and how is that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's probably always been 5%. You know, if you remember the slide where Terry Jamerson was talking about, you know, coming up with reasonable rules and policies, I think that's about the time when 5% was instituted. It may have been earlier than that, but I suspect that's when it was set. 5% allows us to not spend down the principal of funds. If you think about returns that the market is getting over time, if you average that out to 8 to 12% returns over time, it depends on the year, but on average, a 5% spend allows us to spend out a healthy amount of that without dipping into the principal. Yeah. Yes?
Do you have a relationship with United Way?
Not formally.
Okay, in general?
Collegially, yes. We meet for coffee and talk shop and support each other's events and cheer each other on, but no, not formal.
Is there overlap with organizations that you donate to?
I'm sure there is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we grant to any local nonprofit, so I'm sure that we overlap at some point. Yes.
Can you comment on how you handle scholarships?
So we have about 50 funds that create scholarships. Families and individuals have come to us over the years to create scholarships. Sometimes they're in memory of a family member. But the scholarships are basically handled the same way as any of our other funds are handled, in that they pay out 5% every year. But we do have a process that's different for choosing the recipients of the scholarships. So it doesn't go through our distribution committee. Each scholarship fund has its own committee that's named every year. So it could be different every year, but it's made up of 3 to 5 people who review the applicants for each scholarship. Each scholarship has its own separate criteria. So families might want a student who's going to a Virginia college who graduated from EC class. They help come up with the criteria, and students that fit that criteria can apply. And the scholarship committee reviews the applications and recommends the recipient, which is then blessed by our board. Approved by our board, I should say. Yes?
I have a question. So Kathryn, you have some initials after your name. I think is it CFRE?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is, and also a little bit, so I noticed that many of the past presidents and CEOs had come from the banking world.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, so are there changes, because I know like Indiana University has a school of philanthropy, don't they? And
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so I'll try to get all those questions. If I forget one, no. CFRE stands for Certified Fundraising Executive. It's a test that you take, a certification that you earn. I took it probably 10 years ago, took the test, but you basically have to apply to take the test, and to be able to sit for the test, you have to have a certain amount of experience in the fundraising world. You have to show how many dollars you've raised, how many years you've worked in fundraising, to be able to sit for the test. And then the test is a comprehensive review of all things fundraising. So anything from planned giving vehicles to ethics, all different kinds of things to do with fundraising. So I took the test and passed it, and that's why I get to have those letters at the end of my name. And to keep those letters at the end of my name, I have to recertify every few years and show that I'm doing a certain amount of professional work, but also volunteer work to be able to keep that credential. All right, you asked about the fact I'm not a banker or an attorney. Yeah, that's a little bit of a change pace. Of course, Bill Bodine was neither one of those things either, but we both brought in different skill sets. Fortunately, we have a wonderful board and a wonderful investment committee that helps us with all things financial. And I've learned a lot. I read and study and go to conferences and work with our peers at other community foundations to try to learn about best practices. We have an organization called Council of Foundations that does our accreditation as an organization, and they constantly are putting out educational materials. So they've helped me train up on the job. Okay, what was the last? I feel like there was a third question. We lost it. Oh. Yeah.
It seems like philanthropy is now, it's a career path now to go and manage foundations and so it's its own sort of skill set and training.
Yeah, I don't know if that was an option at Virginia Tech in 1996, but I didn't know about it if it was. I don't know if I would have thought to pick that as a area to study. It was kind of a surprise to me to be on this career path, but it's been wonderful. I hope that making more formal pathways for training will help the nonprofit sector. Yes, Lauren.
I would just like to say thank you to the Community Foundation. I'm with Johnson Health Center in development, and the Community Foundation helped us put spot eye screeners in our health center, and we recently were a recipient of the $5,000 grant award from the Youth Philanthropy Council that we're using for Reach Out and Read program in our Amherst facility. And so these programs are not possible without the funding from the Greater Lynchburg Community Foundation. Also share that I'm an active member of the Share Greater Lynchburg and go to their networking events, and it's been so helpful to meet other nonprofits and learn ways that we can collaborate and work together for the betterment of our community.
Thank you. And we talked a lot about the impact of grants and how our assets have grown, and we see that chart kind of grow and grow, but it really is the donors. It's local people, families, organizations, individuals who have given to the foundation that make those grants possible. So it's great that we have 331 funds, but each of those 331 funds represents someone putting the trust in us to do what we said we would do with their hard-earned assets, and we take that very seriously.
Well, if you have any more questions, I invite you to come up and see Kathryn, and also to see, she brought show and tell with her, so absolutely come and see. There's some historic documents over here. Enjoy, take some cookies to go, and we'll hope to see you on May 7th for Carl Hutchinson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.